First of all, I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm sorry that I permit myself to speak in English because I studied all the material in English, and this is the first time that I wrote anything in Hebrew after more than 20 studies years in a different discipline than the one that I had been indulging in Israel. So I hope you will accept that, and I hope that I may start now. Let there be light. Did the Russian Revolution 1917 elevate the peasantry from illiterate blindness? The prevailing view credits the revolution in October with elevating, that is, with providing the exodus of the peasant masses from analphabetism. There are a couple of processes going on during the Tsarist times, and that is the last decades of Tsarism, and this is the increased velocity of letters and postcards referred to by Arkadiusz Kahn, and there is an increased participation in schooling. There is a rising wage work. Odchod and Olga Yokoyama collected the letters exchanged between Odchodniks and the peasants, the peasant king in the villages, that are the evidences of peasants' use of literacy. And this process puzzled me, and I decided to test the regression. The distance to railroad stations and the share of children learning to read in Penza province, this is northern Black Earth province, that is Tsarist Russia. And I am looking for evidence to establish that actually those were the Tsarist railroads and the modernization under Nicolaus II that brought about the exodus from illiteracy, and not primarily the revolution, that the revolution had been the consequence of rising literacy and not the other way around. Now, the results of the initial regressions have been very puzzling and counterintuitive. I received that there is a positive correlation between the distance from the railroads and the rising, that is the share of children learning to read in the population, and the share of children in relation to literate breadwinners. And from the beginning, this was a disaster, right? But I found in Jeffrey Brooks' 2003 that actually this finding also corroborates earlier findings of research that I did together with Professor Michael Keren on the impact of the railroads upon the propensity to choose individualist landholding in Stolypin land reform. That is amongst 15 land categories that emerged from the emancipation until the Stolypin reform. And that is that manifests the transition to individualism and rationalism. And Jeffrey Brooks advises that the further, that is, the collectivist villages had been bureaucratized since the emancipation, and there had been a proliferation of Tsarist reforms, the emancipation, the judicial reform, 1864, and the Stolypin reform. And there had been a rising demand for literate peasants, for clerks, to interpret the changing, amending rule systems. So actually the railroads produced a twofold impact according to the hypothesis that I advance. One, this is to catalyze the reform itself, and the second, this is to shorten the cognitive distance between urban economies and also the goals of migration and the peasantry. That means an increased demand for literacy and increased application for literacy in order to interpret the changing rule systems. Moreover, the opening up of urban labor markets also allowed the peasants to dream of clean work, not the work in the mud. and they deemed that literacy is conducive to that elevation to clean work. For that reason, the railroads opening up those possibilities of a more, let me say, noble, as peasants perceived, labor, also allowed the stimulus, the enhancement to search literacy and to apply it. There is a proliferation of sources of literature that had been thriving due to peddling, Orthodox peddlers and also the Jewish peddlers. And of course the railroads assisted peddling, and peddling had been increasing the velocity of read material, periodicals, the Lubbock literature, and also detective stories that interestingly had been tackling the question of authority vis-a-vis the emancipating peasant. There are a set of institutions, please tell me when the time is, there are a set of institutions that had been especially interacting with the railroads. Those are the Zimstwa, where the peasants had been participating. That is the alternative cost of participating in Zimstwa, in Volostnoy Sud, in the peasant, that is cantonal court based on customary law. The participation of peasantry and creation of crafts networks, artillery, and apprenticeship contracts, all those enhanced, increased the demand for literacy and provided the incentives to acquire literacy. Now, there is thus the higher the bureaucratization of the common amongst those peasants who remained in collectivist structures, the higher the demand for peasant literacy, and there is therefore this correlation that I found, which is a little bit startling. So it seems that there are plentiful dynamic aspects to the increase of literacy prior to the revolution. Therefore, the revolution cannot be, without qualifications, interpreted as the tool of exodus from analphabetism, and the Tsarist railroads, their role in enhancing and providing the incentives to search out and apply literacy, as a matter of fact, should be given due attention. Thank you.
תודה רבה. בזה מסתיימים הדיונים שלנו הערב ומתכנסים מחר בבוקר. תודה רבה לכולם ושלום.